Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3848 AN. Today's date is February 25th, 2026. The title of the episode is Trump just told the country that tariffs will replace income tax. Right on schedule. Now, on January 5th, 2026, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This isn't just government spending. It's a declaration of intent. America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it now. Here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium annually, but produces less than 1 million pounds domestically. That means we're dependent on foreign suppliers for 98% of our uranium, a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced defense systems. With Russia controlling significant global enrichment capacity and Greenland banning uranium mining, the White House has made it crystal clear America must develop its own supply chain. This is where Atomic Minerals comes in, trading on the TSX venture under ATOM and OTC under ATMMF. This company isn't new to the game. It's a team with a history of delivering major uranium exits. The leadership includes members who were part of the discovery and subsequent $655 million sale of Rough Rider deposit in Rio Tinto. The question is, can they do it again? Atomic controls 4 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Colorado Plateau, America's historic uranium province, which has produced over 597 million pounds of uranium. Trading at 87% discount to the peer group average, the company presents potential upside as the market begins to recognize its strategic assets improvement management team. Atomic's first flagship project is South Lisbon Valley East, located in the mining-friendly state of Utah. The project sits within the Lisbon Valley District, one of the most productive uranium belts in the entire United States. The district alone has produced 80 million pounds of uranium. That's documented history, the proof that the geology works. On January 14th, the U.S. administration showed their support again. The White House invoked Section 232 via an executive order, a formal declaration of U.S. resource independence. This goes beyond support. Its mandate, energy security, is now synonymous with national security, and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory arsenal to secure the nuclear fuel cycle with North America. Atomic Minerals, trading as ATMMF in the U.S. and ATOM, ATOM, in Canada, is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Supported by renewed government focus on domestic uranium, the exploration sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years. With its flagship drill program approved, Atomic Minerals has explorations underway and is advancing with a focus on execution. I'll leave you with this. The team includes members who are part of the discovery and subsequent $655 million sale of a major uranium deposit to Rio Tinto, an exit about 59 times larger than Atomic Minerals' current valuation. You do the math. If you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and the team that already delivered big results, check out the link in the description. A special thanks to Atomic Minerals for making today's video possible. Go to atomicminerals.ca or just click the link in the description. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, you can see Trump yesterday during the State of the Union. He sent a very, very clear message to the central bankers, to the deep state players, letting them know that the point of the tariffs is to remove the income tax. And that's what this has been all about. You have to remember, going back to 1913, what did the deep state players, the central bankers, do? They weaseled their way back into the system. This is the third central bank in this country. And now Trump has basically shot the flare up, let them know that, yeah, we're coming after you. Now, I do believe they already knew this. That's why they tried to stop the tariff system, and they were completely and utterly unsuccessful in doing it. Actually, they made it worse, which means they're going to take this to the next level, because you have to really think about this. Do you think they really want to lose the control of the creation of currency where everybody owes them? Because really, that's what that is. There's a centralized location that creates the currency out of thin air. They loan it to everyone with interest attached, and everybody owes them. Not just in this country, but around the world. All the countries owe a private West Central Bank system, a loan sharking system. And our founding fathers, they fought against this every step of the way. And Trump is letting them know that this is where he is headed. He's headed in the direction to remove the Federal Reserve. He's headed in the direction to restore the power back to the people. And no longer will the Federal Reserve take our hard-earned money as we work. This is all about to change. And if you take this to the next step, what else is this going to solve? It's going to solve a lot of the problems that we see today. When we look at the poor, when we look at the inflation, when we look at everything in our country, the central bank has been destroying it slowly but surely, keeping the people down, keeping the people poor, keeping the people working harder and harder and harder. This is their slave system, and they've been using it for quite a while, and it goes back thousands of years. And now it's coming to an end once again. Now, we know that they're going to fight back. We know that they just won't bow out and say, all right, listen, Trump won. What are we going to do? I guess we don't have a printing press anymore. We're not going to loan our currency. We're out of the picture. We're done. Thank you very much. No, they're going to fight back to the very end because they don't want to lose this control. But in the end, they will not win because Trump, he's already built the foundation of the new system. The foundation now is working overtime. It's getting more and more powerful. And as it gets more and more powerful and stronger and better, and the income continually comes in, he can basically use this to overshadow the central bank system. Because everything the central bank system is doing right now, where we're borrowing the currency, Trump can use the income and use it for everything that the central bank provides right now, minus all the fraud. So in the end, the central bank will just be a couple of buildings with about 30,000 PhDs. They'll all just be sitting there. We will no longer borrow from them. We will no longer use them. They will no longer control the economy. They will no longer do anything. And Trump, slowly but surely, maybe he'll do it very quickly, he will pay back the central bank system. Now, of course, I do believe that he'll look through what the central bank has been doing. And I think with everything else that we've seen around the country, we're going to find out that the central bank was involved in fraud, and a lot of fraud, which is criminal activity, which means we're not going to owe the amount that we think we owe. And I do believe once we find out and we separate the fraud from what we actually owe, it's going to be a lot less. And I do believe that Trump is going to basically pay them back, because once he pays them back, there is no need for them whatsoever. They're pushed to the side. They are then removed, restructured, and we no longer need them. And I do believe that's where all of this is headed. And we'll be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about why we see certain items like beef so high in price. Now, yes, we understand that the central bank causes inflation. High energy adds to it. But when you have a monopoly and you have people controlling the price, well, that's a bigger problem than anything else. James O'Keefe, he went undercover at CattleCon. Ranchers and insiders expose how Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef secretly control America's beef market. The OMG team did a deep dive going undercover at CattleCon in 2026 in Nashville, Tennessee. They spoke with beef industry insiders and ranchers about the top four companies, Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef, which dominate U.S. beef processing. These four companies process the majority of U.S. beef. Over time, dozens of smaller processors merged into four major companies known as the Big Four. The Big Four are buying like all the companies in the United States, so they don't have competition. The Big Four can knock you out of this industry in 2 seconds. The Big Four closed all the markets. All the markets are theirs in Brazil and now in the U.S. In November 2025, Trump tweeted the cattle prices were falling while boxed beef prices kept rising, calling it fishy. With the Department of Justice urging action over possible price manipulation by major meat packers, we decided to investigate and do something about it, OMG says. Our team spoke directly with the ranchers and industry partners, documenting firsthand how the Big Four dominate the market and impact pricing. As beef prices climb, many cattle producers say they have little influence over the price they receive, raising questions about how costs are set from the ranch to the store shelf. The Department of Justice has looked into whether the Big biggest beef companies have too much control over the industry and whether they work together to raise prices. The big four companies deny any wrongdoing, insisting that the prices are driven solely by supply and demand. Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef control most of the U.S. beef industry, raising serious questions about who really sets the price. So when you see higher prices at the grocery store, it's worth asking why. This may explain why your steak keeps costing more. And remember, Trump now is bringing in beef from Argentina, and this is going to bypass the meat packing plants. So I think we're going to see very, very clearly, is this what's causing the problem? And I think we're going to find out. I think we already know. I think we're going to find out, yeah, they've been controlling the prices. And once again, the DOJ must investigate. They must see what's going on. And if there is a monopoly and control over the price, it must be broken up, which I do believe it's going to happen. Now, during the State of the Union, Trump is letting everyone know that he inherited an economy that was crashing. And that's pretty much what he was inheriting, because you have to remember the Biden/Obama central bank, the deep state players, they were creating the atmosphere to crash the economy. They wanted to bring us into the Great Reset. Actually, they mentioned this back in March of 2020, letting everyone know that this is the perfect time for the Great Reset. So to bring us to the Great Reset, they had to crash the economic system. They had to remove our dependence on oil. They had to set the oil prices very high. They had to push inflation to the extreme. Because how else do you crash an economic system? You got to make the people pay. You got to make the people feel the pain. And eventually, you got to make the market come down to make people believe that all of a sudden the market, the economy, and everything else just fell apart. So during Biden's time, what happened? We saw that inflation went sky high. And it's not just 9%. You got to add up all the inflation markers. So we were looking at something probably close to 20-something%. And as Trump came in, he lowered the inflation. So when you see inflation 2.4, 2.5, 2.7 this year, next year, the other year, you got to add them all up. It's cumulative. And this is the way the central bank system works. Actually, it's one gigantic illusion. But Stephen Moore put this out and said, inflation under Biden hit 9.1%, the fastest price growth since Jimmy Carter. Under President Trump, inflation is down near 2% and falling. Historically, for American families, that's the real state of our union. And you have to remember, Trump is still playing within the central bank illusionary economic system. We haven't escaped it yet until we get rid of the central bank. So when he uses these numbers, he's using it against the central bank system. He knows that it's cumulative. He knows it's much, much more. But again, for the people, the everyday person, they're not really paying attention to that. They're just looking at, oh, is it 8%? Is it 2%? Or what's the real inflation? Well, true inflation says the inflation that Trump now has created is much, much lower than what the Fed has reported. Of course, the Fed, they're using manipulated calculations, and they want to keep their inflation numbers high. Why? Because they don't want to lower the rates. So the true inflation is saying that inflation is around 0.95%, below 1% for the week. The relief is real. Americans just aren't seeing it in lagging data yet. And basically, it's what people are feeling. They're feeling that the hangover from the Biden administration. And remember, you can't get rid of the inflation that was already created. Yeah, you can if you pay back everything and you restore the Federal Reserve note to the beginning stages of 1971. But otherwise, when you bring the rate down, it doesn't restore everything back to where we were. I mean, let's use for an example. If you weigh 150 pounds and you put on 100 pounds, you put 250 pounds on. You did that in 1 year. You put on 100 pounds. Every year after that, you put on 2 pounds. Are you adding to the weight? Yes. You might not be adding a lot of weight, like 100 pounds per year, but you're still adding 2 pounds per year. So in year one, you weigh 252. In year two, you weigh 254, 256, 258. This is how it works with inflation. This is why people still feel the effects of inflation. It just doesn't go away. Now, can Trump mitigate this? Absolutely. How do you do that? You raise wages. How do you do that? You get rid of the illegals. You put more money in the people's pockets. How do you do that? You lower energy costs. Oh, wait, Trump is doing that. How else can you do it? Well, no tax on tips, No tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. When do you feel that? When you file your taxes. How else can he do it? He can remove the income tax from the people. You know what's interesting? Every day there's a new beauty gimmick taking over social media. It seems like people are wearing 10 different masks, tapes, and patches to bed just to wake up glowing. But in 2026, we know that glow is just trapped sweat that disappears by noon. If you want skin that actually stays firm, you have to stop obsessing over the surface and start loading up your collagen internally. This is why Aegis Multi-Collagen is a non-negotiable part of my day. Unlike those viral gimmicks, Aegis Multi-Collagen provides 5 premium types of collagen that works from inside out to help reduce wrinkle volume, bring back my youthful glow, and restore my skin's natural bounce. It's flavorless, clump-free, and specifically designed to be highly bioavailable, so it actually reaches my cells. Since I started, my skin has the natural hydration and elasticity that no night mask or face tape could ever replicate. To celebrate Valentine's, get 51% off Aegis Multi-Collagen at healthwithx22.com. Every order includes a glow-up bundle with free VIP coaching for life, the 14 Foods for Amazing Skin ebook, and free shipping. Plus, it's all backed by a 60-day money-back guarantee. Head to healthwithx22.com now to claim your 51% discount before it expires, or just click the link in the description. Or he could just pay everything back and go back to the gold standard. That gives you complete and utter buying power back, and all of a sudden your currency is worth a lot. You don't need as many of those pieces of paper to pay for those items anymore. You need a lot less of those pieces of paper. But you can see Trump, he said something very interesting. He said that core inflation fell to 1.7% in the last quarter of 2025. And of course, the fact checkers were all out there. And yes, he's correct. And basically, the verdict is true. And using the standard 3-month annualized measure of inflation based on the seasonally adjusted core consumer price index, the CPI, the rate was about 1.7% at the end of 2025. That's the lowest 3-month annualized rate since the first quarter of 2021. The end of President Trump's first term in office and the beginning of Biden's, where he took the inflation to a place that no one has ever seen before, unless you go back to 1971. But once again, you could see why Trump is also lowering energy costs. And think about what the deep state players were doing. They were raising energy costs, trying to bring us into solar and wind. What happens when you cannot produce electricity? What happens when you don't have energy? You actually have a third world country that can't produce anything. How do we know this? Well, the proof is in the pudding. The rabbit hole put this out and says, electricity and income per capita, all countries. When you look at the countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sudan, Nigeria, and many others, they don't have electricity, which means they don't have the income, which means they don't have the manufacturing, which means they are very poor countries. When you look at China, when you look at the United States, Japan, Ireland, Norway, these countries produce energy. They have electricity, which means they have higher incomes because they have manufacturing. Where did they want to bring Europe and the United States? They wanted to bring us into the category where we had no energy, which means if we don't have an energy, we can't produce. If we don't produce, we have very low income. Actually, they were making Europe and the United States a third world nation or nations. And who was going to keep their electricity? Who was going to keep their energy? China. That's who was going to keep it. And you could see Trump hit the Supreme Court pretty darn hard at the State of the Union, letting them know that they made the wrong ruling. I think some of these individuals were controlled by foreign entities. But Eric Doherty put this out and said, President Trump just told the Supreme Court justices to their faces that their anti-tariff ruling backfired because the tariffs will remain in place. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett are trying very hard to keep a straight face. The Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement, congressional action will not be necessary, Trump says. So the Supreme Court got involved. They made the wrong ruling. And now he's using other methods or other statutes to keep the tariffs in place, which we'll be discussing in just a sec. But you have to remember, the deep state players kept saying, it's the people that are paying for the tariffs. It's the people. So shouldn't all the people get a refund then? C3 put this out and said, let me get this straight. If Trump's tariffs were taxes paid for by the consumer, like the Democrats and media told us, then why are major corporations suing Trump to be reimbursed? Almost as if the media and Democrats were lying the whole time. Pretty much, that's exactly what was happening. Corporations, countries, they were all eating the costs. Now, they're going to try to sue. They're going to try to get their money back. But what's going to happen is as they're paying more taxes now, it's all going to be a wash. So this whole refund thing is completely and utterly ridiculous because they're just going to use it to pay the additional tariff. So it makes no sense whatsoever. But you can see Trump's economy is getting stronger and stronger every single day. EJ Antonio PhD put this out and said ADP's 4-week moving average shows job growth of 12,754 period ending February 7th, indicating weekly job growth continues accelerating slowly, now at approximately 51,000 per month. And things are just getting better and better and better. And Trump let everyone know that we have received 80 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. And I think this is just the beginning, because once the investments come into Venezuela, once the technology is put into place, what are we going to see? We're going to see millions upon millions of barrels every single day coming into the United States, which eventually what's going to happen is that oil prices are going to go way down. I mean, right now, regulations are being lifted here in this country, and we're starting to see that oil companies are starting to drill like crazy, and we're going to have oil flood the market across the globe, which I do believe is going to bring oil prices way, way down. I think they're going to go below $2, and they might be just a hair above $1 by the time we get to the midterms. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. But EJ Antonio let us know that the first year of Trump's second term has been good for the economy. The numbers say so. The market says so. And for millions of ordinary Americans checking their retirement accounts, grocery bills, and paychecks, the feeling is sinking in. Start with the markets. Since the inauguration, the S&P 500 has climbed between 13 and 16%, touching an all-time high of over 7,000 earlier this year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed 50,000 this month for the first time. Inflation, meanwhile, was cooled. Annual inflation, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, CPI, for the 12 months ending in January, came in at 2.4%, down from 2.7%, and far removed from the 9.1% peak of June 2022. Because inflation outpaced wage growth under Biden, the average weekly paycheck bought 4% less when he left office, despite the paychecks being 17% larger. For the millions of households whose purchasing power was quietly eroded by Biden inflation, the recent drop in inflation is much needed relief. The average weekly paycheck now buys 2% more than when Trump took office. Retirement savers have felt it too. Average 401k balances have reached record levels, rising about 17% since the first quarter of 2025. One analysis found aggregate averages across multiple accounts are around $340,000. This is what compounded confidence looks like in practice. The legislative cornerstone of this economic momentum is the One Big Beautiful Bill, signed into law by President Trump on July 4, 2025. Without it, Americans were facing what would have been the largest tax hike in history, more than $4 trillion hitting in 2026 when the 2017 Trump tax cuts expired. The One Big Beautiful Bill prevented that, making those rates permanent and expanding on them. According to the House Ways and Means Committee, the One Big Beautiful leaves the average family with about $1,700 better off each year, while a median income household with 2 children can expect an increase in take-home pay of roughly $4,000 to $5,000. At the end of the day, economies run on confidence, not on speeches or executive orders or regulatory rollbacks alone, but on the quiet, cumulative belief that the environment is stable enough to take a risk, hire someone, save for the future. That belief has been returning. You can see it in the data, like with investment rising to 3.8%. And increasingly, people can feel it in their lives. And as we go throughout this year, people are going to feel it every single day. Fuel prices are going to start to go way, way down. When people start to get the tax refunds, much, much larger than last year or the year before that, people are going to go, holy crap, look at all this money I have now. A lot more than I had before. As people get wage increases in business, or they find another job, because jobs now are coming back to the United States. When they find another job or get a wage increase, they're going to have even more money. So when you start to put all this together, people are going to be pretty darn happy. Now, think about it. I do believe as we get closer and closer to the midterms, what is Trump going to do? He's going to basically give everyone additional funds, maybe through the tariff system. And as we get closer to the midterms, just like we're going to be talking about, Trump is going to remove the income tax, which is going to be an incredible boost to a lot of people, especially the middle class. Remember, when the central bank system came in 1913, slowly but surely, what did they do? They started with the wealthy, saying, listen, only the wealthy will pay the income tax. Of course, the rest of the country was like, yes, the wealthy, they can afford it. And then slowly but surely, what happened? Well, they tricked the people. And then we had the upper middle class, the lower middle class, the poor. And then before you knew it, everybody was paying income tax. Trump is just reversing all of this. He's starting with the poor, the lower middle class, and the middle class. I wouldn't be surprised if he says, listen, anyone making $150,000 or less, you will not have to pay income tax. That covers, I think, the majority of the country. And if he does this before the midterms, he will be a hero like we've never seen before. And this is why Trump is building the tariff system. Now, remember, the deep state players, the central bankers, never expected Trump to win the election. They never expect him to build the parallel economic system like he's building right now. They never expected him to make deals like he's making deals across the country. And they expected everything to be moved to China. And they expected the economic system to crash. They expecting the Great Reset. This is why China has been accumulating so much gold. Because, again, you were going to have to restore confidence when the economic system crashes. So they thought, and I'm talking about the deep state, the central bankers, that they would be able to crash the economy. And they would say, well, China has all the gold. That's where the confidence is. And we will then connect the central bank digital currency, the digital, yen or whatever was going to be, to gold at this time to build confidence, just like they did every single time before when they started a new system. And that's why China has so much gold, because they were preparing China to be the next system, and all the manufacturing, everything was going to be coming out of China. But again, that has now come to an end. And when you look at it, you could see Trump has many different ways to push the tariff system. He has Section 232, Section 301, and Section 122. I do believe he used the IEEPA, the weakest statute, on purpose, because he knew that the deep state players, the central bankers, were going to sue. He knew that the other statutes were much stronger. They're codified in law by Congress, and they stood the test of time. If you go back in time, these Section 232, that is from 1962. If you look at Section 301, that is from 1974. If you look at Section 122, that is from 1974. All of these statutes, they've been in existence for a very long time. Plus, if you go to Section 232, it used to be 19 U.S.C. 1862, and it was amended. So these have been around for a very long time. They stood the test of time. He doesn't need congressional approval because they already exist. So I do believe this is exactly what he did. And he prepped everything for one reason only. Oh, maybe two, which actually they kind of connect: to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Because once again, this is the third one in this country. This Federal Reserve enslaves the people. It takes the resources from inside of the country instead of outside of the country, and makes people work harder and harder and harder. It's funny how people say, oh, Trump's tariff system is going to cause inflation. Think about what the central bank has caused. The central bank right now has caused 3,000% inflation. That's a tax on the people, not including the state tax, the income tax. I mean, if we just take those away, the currency has lost 3,000% of its value, which means you have to work harder and harder. You have to come up with more of these pieces of paper to buy the same exact thing that you bought in 1971. The item didn't change. It was the value of the currency. And remember, when there is a tariff system like Trump is building, there isn't a central bank. Go back in time. When there's a tariff system, we don't have a private West Central Bank. When there's a private West Central Bank, we don't have a tariff system. not the way it is today, or it's going to be. So when people say, oh, this is going to ruin the economy, no, we have to get rid of the central bank. Trump is going to transition everything from a debt system where they take your hard-earned money to an income system where we take it from the outside and we pay for everything. You, as a laborer, or if you own your own business, you get to keep everything that you earned. So let's say you don't have inflation, that hidden tax. So the value of the currency is sustained. No one's taking an income tax from you. Guess what an income tax is? Your labor. We're taking part of your labor. You owe us. It's like someone back in time where they had the slaves and they're like, okay, give us part of your income. Isn't that what a loan sharker does? Absolutely. So again, does the tariffs really hurt you? No, because the tariffs, they're bringing in currency from the outside. It already exists. So you're not creating more of it. So you're not devaluing the currency. And there's no reason to take your hard-earned labor. So your currency is not being devalued, and you don't have to hand over 20, 30, 40% of your hard-earned labor. So you get to keep all that, which means you have incredible buying power. This is what the central bank doesn't want you to see. This is why everyone's saying, oh, tariffs are bad. It's going to hurt you. No, the central bank hurts you. Any day of the week, I will compare the central bank system and a tariff system without the central bank system. The tariff system without the central bank will win every single time. It's been proven throughout history. And this is what Trump is doing. Take a listen to what he says here.
Primary reasons for our country's stunning economic turnaround, the biggest in history, where the Dow Jones broke 50,000 4 years ahead of schedule, and the S&P hit 7,000, where it wasn't supposed to do it for many years, were tariffs. I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country, both economically and on a national security basis. Everything was working well. Countries that were ripping us off for decades are now paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. They were ripping us so badly, you all know that. Everybody knows it. Even the Democrats know it. They just don't want to say it. And yet these countries are now happy, and so are we. We made deals. The deals are all done. And they're happy. They're not making money like they used to, but we're making a lot of money. There was no inflation, tremendous growth. And the big story was how Donald Trump called the economy correctly, and 22 Nobel Prize winners in economics didn't. They got it totally wrong. They got it really wrong. And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling. But the good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made, right, Scott? Knowing that the legal power that I, as president, have to make a new deal could be far worse for them, and therefore they will continue to work along the same successful path that we had negotiated before the Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement. So despite the disappointing ruling, these powerful country saving. It's saving our country, the kind of money we're taking in. Peace protecting. Many of the wars I settled was because of the threat of tariffs. I wouldn't have been able to settle them without. Will remain in place under fully approved and tested alternative legal statutes. And they have been tested for a long time. They're a little more complex, but they're actually probably better, leading to a solution that will be even stronger than before. Congressional action will not be necessary. It's already time-tested and approved. And as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love.
That is the complete mission. And Trump is going to be pushing for this. Now, again, the central bankers, they don't want this to happen. They will push back with everything that they have. But in the end, it will all fail. They're too late already. Trump's system is getting stronger and stronger. And by the time we hit the midterms, it will be a machine like we've never seen before. And the central bank, a debt system, well, it just can't compete with it. They know it. So the only thing they'll have left is to try to bring down their own system. But Trump, he already knows the playbook. He already knows what they're planning to do. That's why he built a new system. And in the end, they will fail, just like everything else. And that central bank, the private central bank that we see today, it will cease to exist the way we know it. And the power, the economic power, will be returned to the people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.